All right, welcome back, guys. Um, DT has kindly allowed us to cast one of his games on Vassal. He's trying out a very wacky list. Give me 1 second to set up my Twitch dashboard. Okay, I am back. All right, so let's take a look at these lists here. Okay, they're playing on Stashed Away, which is the mission where you get 2 points per crate that you control at the end of the round. DT's running a Bantha list, which I haven't seen a Bantha list since now HOTE was introduced. Banthas are very hard to use on now HOTE. But we'll see how they work out on Mos Eisley. I'm pretty interested in checking out this game. Alright, so let's take a look at his list. He's running Elite Sentry Droids, Bantha, eNexu, Elite, Elite Jawa, R2-D2, and Gideon. He also has Temporary Alliance, Devious Scheme, Beast Tamer, and Black Market. He's up against a very standard list in this meta. 2 regular officers, Darth Vader, Palpatine, and 2 sets of elite jet troopers. It looks like so far Turin has first blood. Not exactly sure what he killed, but he is showing 2 victory points. Let's see. It's possible that DT was also running 3PO. Let's count his victory or his deployment costs. 10 for Sentry droids, 19 with the Bantha, 25 for the Nexu, 28 with the Jawa, 34 with R2 and Gideon, 35, 36, 37, 38 with his upgrades. So he was running another 2 cost deployment card, probably 3PO, but I'm not completely sure. He's decided to focus the Elite Nexu, which is an interesting choice. I personally prefer to focus the Sentry droids since they have a reroll. Generally, focus is better on units that have either good surges or rerolls. The Sentries have okay surges. You're never going to waste a surge with them. The Nexu, on the other hand, does have a surge for +2, which he doesn't get that often since he's rolling red-green. He also automatically cleaves. He automatically inflicts bleed as long as he inflicts damage. He has cunning, which gives him +1 block for every evade that he rolls. He has pounce, which lets him choose a space within 3 spaces and place his figure in that space in any orientation you want, and then perform an attack. He cannot interact with doors, interestingly. And like I said, he's melee, rolling red-green. Surge for +2. He's also mobile and has 6 speed, so the Elite Nexus are very strong units. An interesting thing about DT's list against Vader, he has a lot of sources of damage that are indirect or unmitigatable. For instance, the Bantha Rider has an ability called Stampede, which anytime you land on a small figure, in fact, it's not limited to small figures. Anytime you end your movement in spaces that contain other figures, each hostile figure suffers 1 damage. So he can easily put unmitigatable damage on Vader. Right now, he's moving his Bantha to land on these jet troopers, which is going to do 1 damage to each of them. I should also mention that the Bantha has an ability called Trample, where he can select up to 3 hostile figures that are adjacent to him, roll a red die. Each figure selected suffers that much damage. You can see he just did that to these 2 jet troopers and Palpatine, for a total of 4 damage each on the jet troopers and 3 damage on Palpatine. Again, that's unmitigatable damage, so Vader's 2 black die will not help him. Meanwhile, the Nexu also has unmitigatable damage with his Cleave 2. And the Nexu could inflict bleed on Vader, which would be very bad for him as well. So DT's list is a little wonky, but he has plenty of ways to deal with this very common Imperial list. We'll see how it works out. Some cards you have to keep in mind when you're facing a Bantha list. The most common one is called Jundland Terror. It's an end of round effect. You can have up to 2 copies of it in your deck. Of course, you can only play 1 per timing instance, so 1 per round. What that card lets you do is move up to 2 spaces with the Bantha and perform either an attack or a trample action. Generally, you will use it to trample, and so you can get, like he just did, up to 4 damage. So, for instance, if DT has Jundland Terror at the end of this round, he's going to move onto Palpatine and this Jet Trooper and Stampede Trample to do at least 2 damage to Palpatine and the bottom jet. up to 4 damage on both of those, and up to 3 damage on the top jet. There's a pretty high percentage chance that he'll wipe out this group of jet troopers outright. So the Bantha is causing a lot of trouble right now for Turin. DT's about to take the initiative, unless Turin has the command card take initiative. And if he does, he's going to be able to absolutely demolish Turin's jet troopers. DT has 5 cards in hand. He can also play Black Market to draw another card if he doesn't have Junlin Terror yet. In fact, he can do those two in any order he wants, I believe, since they're both end of round actions. Vader's in an awkward spot. He doesn't have so since the Bantha is massive, you can draw a line of sight over small figures to see the Bantha. So Vader moves back and force chokes the Bantha Rider for 3 damage. Since the Bantha has 21 health and no defensive abilities, his health are not quite as valuable as health on other figures. If someone deals strain to the Bantha Rider, you usually want to take that strain as damage. That same holds true for characters like Onar, anyone that doesn't roll die, or something like a die that maybe has -1 dodge, like for hired guns, for instance. So DT did have a copy of Junlin Terror, and he's using it now. He decided to trample. He decided to, yes, trample for 1 damage each on both of the jet troopers, and now he has to decide where he wants to spend his 2 movement points. With massive figures, if you end your movement in a space containing other hostile figures, or any other figures that is, you cannot move again during that timing instance. So, Junlin Terror is a special action, which means you have to spend both movement points at the same time anyway. But even if you could spend one at a time, you can't end your movement in a space containing hostile figures and then move again in the same timing instance. So ET actually whiffs on the trample with that 1 damage result, leaving both jet troopers alive. Now DT plays Call the Vanguard, probably hoping to move his elite sentry droids into a better position to attack this round. DT has initiative, so Call the Vanguard happens before fuel upgrade. DT is moving his sentry droid up to attack Vader. Now, since he's using Call the Vanguard, he does not get the bonus accuracy from the Concentrated Fire ability. Since Concentrated Fire is a special ability and Call of the Vanguard just makes you do a regular attack. So, that said, there are 5 accuracy showing. So, DT needs to surge for accuracy. So that would be 1 damage. Turin does not have take initiative, which means that DT can now activate his Bantha, finish off these 2 jet troopers that are wounded with trample, and then move on top of Vader, making sure that Vader cannot move up and attack this sentry droid. Now DT has to be careful because he doesn't want to push Vader up at all. Since he has Beast Tamer, the Bantha gets a free move, so he's going to go ahead and attack Palpatine. Bantha, their attack is not great. It's a blue-red with no reroll. He did max roll it though. The attack does not have surge for damage. The two surges are Pierce 2 and +2 accuracy. So it's a pretty inconsistent attack. Looks like Palpatine's going to be safe unless DT has a card called Trample, which is when a massive figure lands on top of a small figure, you can play, sorry, the card is called Crush. If DT has Crush, he could play that to do 3 unmitigatable damage to Palpatine and finish him off before he gets to go. DT has to be careful with this Bantha. It's probably going to die this round, but it actually doesn't really matter because it's done enough work to make up for its 9-point cost. I'm not sure where DT's other focus went. If he was playing with 3PO, he should have had another focus to distribute. So DT is pondering his move. He doesn't want to push Vader up because Vader could easily one-hit his sentry droid there in the middle. He also, though, doesn't want to waste the Stampede ability, which can do 3 damage right now. He has 5 movement points with the Bantha. He's going to elect to retreat with the Bantha. This way Palpatine can't immediately make Vader attack the Bantha. You never want to have Palpatine ordering Vader to attack when you're playing against him. A little bit passive with the Bantha, but it does force Turin to make a tough decision now, whether he wants to move up and attack the sentry droids or stay back and focus on the Bantha. Since the Bantha's gone, he can easily move Vader back into a very passive spot in the rear and attack, and then get an easy Palpatine order off. However, since Palpatine only has he has 9 damage on him, he has 4 health left. So he doesn't want to move Vader out of the way and leave Palpatine exposed for those elite sentry droids. For those of you that don't know, DT is Daniel Taylor. He's the 2-time world champion of Imperial Assault. I believe he also, I know he was at the Northwestern Regionals yesterday. I'm not sure how he did. I know he was 4-0 after the Swiss rounds. I'm not sure how he did in the top cut. Turin elects to activate his jet troopers, moving up to attack DT's elite sentry droids. The weakness of the sentries is that they are relatively fragile. They have 8 health apiece, and they roll a black die. It's not impossible to kill them with a set of jets, although it's kind of tough. It's also not difficult to one-shot them with Darth Vader. Fuel upgrade has been played this round, so the jets do get 5 movement speed plus the 2 from flyby. So they can pretty much go wherever they want. DT's next action is probably going to be activating the Elite Nexu and bringing him into either Cleave Vader. Let's see if he can pounce onto Palpatine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3. So he can't quite get to Palpatine that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or that way. So he can get to this space here, which allows him to attack Vader and cleave to onto either the jet or the officer. Now the officer. Turin took a shot at that sentry. Now I guess he's decided that there's no way he can finish him off with Jet B, so he's going to just let him go. Instead, he deals 6 damage to the Bantha. It's very important that Turin finish off this Bantha rider before the start of round 3. You can't let the Bantha have 2 rounds of wreaking havoc. DT elects to stall by activating Gideon and pushing the Bantha back 2 spaces, focusing his sentry droid that's in the back. He figures that his focused Nexu is safe. He also got his Bantha out of range of Vader. The risk there is that if Vader has any movement cards, he could easily come up and try to kill the Nexu in one hit. That would totally waste the Nexu's focus, although it would expose Vader to 2 sentry droid attacks. At this point, DT probably wants to finish off Palpatine. So if he started attacking Vader, that wouldn't necessarily be something to worry about for Turin. If Turin wanted to play more passively, he could attack the Bantha with Vader. He is going to push Vader to the rear with an officer. This does expose Palpatine to an elite sentry attack. So Turin elects to block Palpatine off with the officer. He's also going to play Squad Swarm to activate his other officer. He's actually activating. Right. He can't activate Vader after an officer with Squad Swarm. He's thinking of the other card, I'm not sure what it's called. There's a 1-cost command card that lets you go with 2 groups in a row as long as the combined cost of both groups doesn't exceed 12. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. Honestly, Turin should hold on to Squad Swarm. It's he can no longer use it with the jet troopers, which is what it was intended for, but he still can use it with Zillow as an extra block, and that is a much better use than activating his other officer right now. So he decides to push Vader towards the sentry droids instead of back towards the Bantha only. I think this is a much better decision for Turin because it gives him some different options of what he can do with Vader. It does expose his Vader to the sentry droids. In fact, DT is going to come up. I thought he was going to commit the sentry droids and multi-fire, but he instead is going to charged shot against the officer. DT doesn't want anything to do with Vader right now. He knows that attacks on Vader probably aren't going to amount to anything before round 4 or 5 at least. Instead, he takes a charged shot at the officer, and it's a miss. DT gives us a sigh in chat of frustration. Nobody likes wasting shots against dodges, especially if they're on officers. The other sentry is probably going to move up and attack Vader. He's going to use Element of Surprise to remove one of Vader's black die. It's always good to remove die on figures that can reroll. Of course, it's always also good to remove die against Vader, who rolls 2 black. Not the best attack coming in. Okay, the reroll makes this attack very strong. Turin rerolls into an evade, which isn't terrible. 5 damage in 1 shot against Vader is plenty of damage. Now, Turin could elect to drop Squad Swarm here for a block. He decides to hang on to it instead. Vader has 10 health left. It's not any place for Turin to worry. The Elite Nexu still has to go. If Turin has any movement cards, his next action should be trying to kill the Nexu with Vader. He has initiative next round. So putting Vader down there next to the sentries, he could potentially kill the Nexu, the damaged sentry with his end of round attack, and the undamaged sentry with his start of round 3. However, he needs Force Rush or Urgency or some other movement card to make that possible right now. Turin instead decides to pass. DT has 3 activations left, R2-D2, the Nexu, and the Jawa. Turin has this black officer Emperor Palpatine, and Vader. So turn cannot pass because each player has 3 groups left. Turn decides to activate Vader. He's going to move up and force choke the Jawa. DT decides to take card as strain, leaving the Jawa with 1 health left, which will surely be picked off with Palpatine's Tempt. It's very fortunate for Turin that Junlin Terror was just discarded, because it's unlikely that Turin is going to finish off this Bantha Rider before DT gets an end of round action with it. If DT had drawn Junlin Terror, he would have been able to trample Vader and Jet A. The Jawa will go attack this regular officer and kill it. Elite Jawas can sometimes have surprisingly decent attacks. Yellows are very inconsistent though. Turin's now on the back foot. His Vader is way out of position. There's no way he's going to be attacking DT's Elite Sentry droids in the next 2 rounds. He also desperately needs to finish off this Bantha Rider before it gets to activate. He doesn't have negation, so it's possible that DT will steal initiative and go with the Bantha, which would be devastating for Turin. Turin's also sacrificing his terminal. And in fact, Turin may not know this, but his Palpatine is now in range of DT's eNexu, because the eNexu has pounce and mobile. So Turin actually uses his officer to push Palpatine away outside of the eNexu's pounce range. DT activates R2, drawing a card. Turin decides to move Palpatine up. Palpatine doesn't need line of sight to use his Emperor ability. For some reason I cannot view Turin's cards, only DT's. So I'm sure the Emperor will force Vader to attack the Bantha Rider. And then he will probably attack himself, although I'm not sure the math. I think his attack is better than a Force Lightning. Maybe he will actually elect to force lightning instead. Yep. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he rolls a red-green with a surge for +1 damage. That's usually gonna beat 3 damage. So DT is saying that Vader takes a damage from Force Lightning. Not exactly sure how that works. I guess it's every adjacent figure takes 1 damage. I've never seen a massive figure Force Lightning. DT plays opportunistic, which pushes Palpatine back. Now, Vader cannot attack with Palpatine's order, although he could order the Jet A to attack. Still, he should have forced Vader to attack before he used Force Lightning. If DT had drawn Crush just now, he could kill Palpatine and Palpatine's activation would be over. So no figures would get to use the Emperor ability. Turin is very lucky that DT did not just draw Crush. He does max roll the attack with the Jet, one off a max roll rather, doing 6 damage. However, Vader probably could have killed the Bantha in 1 hit, so a bit of a waste. Turin has 2 movement points on this Jet, but he's not going to take them. Meanwhile, DT is going to move in and take the terminal. Actually, he's going to pounce. He pounces and attacks Jet B with red, green, green. He also has an automatic cleave 2 onto that black officer. His surges are... one is cancelled because of fuel upgrade. The other surge is for +2 damage. So that would be 6 damage right now. So Turin converts to another evade. So 5 damage and bleed to the Jet. 2 damage to the officer. Turin is absolutely on the back foot now. It's very important that he start the round strong, killing both the Bantha and, if he can, the eNexu. The best way for him to do that would be to activate Palpatine, get one of the jets to attack the eNexu. He would have to Force Lightning the Bantha, and he'd probably have to tempt the eNexu as well, and then hope that he gets lucky and that the eNexu rolls a blank. That is a very low percentage play. If he had something like Force Surge or some other card that could deal damage like that. Oh, so I forgot about Vader's end of round attack. So it's likely that Vader will finish off the Bantha. In which case, he can Force Lightning the eNexu, although that will kill his officer. And yes, Vader finishes off the Bantha. Turin does have the option of attacking the Bantha with Vader instead of going with Palpatine. I think it's a lower percentage play though.